Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Kardonic. I'm the Executive Director for the Jewish Community Center of Scranton. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us this evening as we remember the 6 million Jews that perished in the Holocaust. This being our first ever sort of virtual commemoration and program, there is some symbolism here. Um, as the Holocaust did not stop the perseverance and the survival of the Jewish people, now, given this challenge with the COVID-19 crisis, we're not allowing it to prevent us from coming together as a Jewish community tonight to remember, one of the most tragic and horrific events in the history of our people. And I think that says a lot, that we're about our continued perseverance as Jewish people, as our community, and with the use of our technology, and it's just another example of the perseverance, and that we're grateful to be here together, to remember, to share, to educate, and to be inspired. This technology obviously wouldn't have been easily obtainable really 10 to 20 years ago. So the fact that we're able to persevere and really be able to come together tonight to remember through this crisis is just another testament to us and as our community and as Jewish people. And I just want to thank everyone for being a part of this and helping to make this happen tonight. I would like to begin by turning our program over to our event chair this evening, Esther Edelman, and she will begin with the first part of our program. Esther?
Okay. I begin with words of neurologist and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz and 3 other camps. One evening when we were already resting on the floor of our hut, dead tires, soup bowls in hand, a fellow prisoner rushed in and asked us to run out to the assembly grounds to see the wonderful sunset. Standing outside, we saw the whole sky in the west alive with clouds of ever-changing shapes and colors, from steel blue to blood red. The desolate gray mud huts provided a sharp contrast, while the puddles on the muddy ground reflected the glowing sky. Then, after minutes of moving silence, one prisoner said to another, "How beautiful the world could be." And words of Auschwitz survivor Rabbi Hugo Green. It was the cold winter of 1944, and although we had nothing like calendars, my father, who was my fellow prisoner there, took me and some of our friends to a corner in our barrack. He announced that it was the eve of Hanukkah, produced a curious-shaped clay bowl, and began to light a wick immersed in his precious but now melted margarine ration. Before he could recite the first blessing, I protested at the waste of food. He looked at me, then at the lamp, and finally said, "You and I have seen that it is possible to live up to 3 weeks without food. Once we lived almost 3 days without water, but you cannot live properly for 3 minutes without hope." Today, all the people of the earth are living through devastating times. We are unhappy because we cannot always access the food that we are accustomed to. We cannot be with our friends and families. We cannot go shopping, or to a concert, or to a baseball game, or even to work or to school. Our world as we know it has been turned upside down. What about the world of the victims of the Holocaust? We have warm beds. We have food in our bellies. We have our friends and families just a click away. We don't have to worry about being shot or beaten at someone's whim, or being denied a bowl of watery, maggoty soup, or sleeping crowded together on a wooden platform, or freezing in our filthy, lice-ridden, paper-thin clothing. Then, with hope and light, 2 small words, 2 powerful words, along with faith in God, they sustain their will to live. Now, we must simply remember to do as much for ourselves. The 6 million members of our family who perished have left their lives to us. It is our obligation to ensure that the world never forgets them, even in the midst of our own dark times. I'm going to light a candle now. Let this candle of remembrance represent the 6 million candles aglow against the darkness of their unfinished lives. And let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Dan, back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Esther. So tonight I'm excited to introduce our presenter. Um, it's my pleasure to welcome author Nancy Gerber, who will be presenting on the topic of motherhood and the Holocaust. I was fortunate enough to stumble across Nancy while reading the New Jersey Jewish News in Metro West New Jersey, and noticed that many of her articles focused on motherhood, and some had particular connection to the Holocaust. I was intrigued by the subject matter and thought it'd be a very powerful and inspiring topic as we remember the victims this year. A little bit about Nancy. She received a PhD in English from Rutgers University and completed psychoanalytic training at the Academy of Clinical and Applied Psychoanalysis in Livingston, New Jersey. She is the author of several books and articles, including a scholarly essay on From a World Apart by Francine Christoph, who you're going to hear more about. Her novella, What the Living Remember, inspired by her father's experiences as a refugee from Nazi Germany, is forthcoming from Apprentice House Press in October of 2020. And of course, Nancy also has a website where her work is available. It's nancygerber.net. So I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and thank her for joining us tonight. Nancy Gerber, to come and begin her talk with us. Nancy? Let me put you on, hold on, let me take you off mute for a second. There you go, hold on. There you go, now you're off mute.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so thank you all for coming. I'm very happy to see so many faces. I do have a talk that I prepared. My understanding was we were going to watch the video first.
Yes.
So you want me to say a few words about the video?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay. So the video we are about to watch features a French Holocaust survivor, a woman named Francine Christoph. She was born in Paris in August 1933, and she's alive. So this August she'll be celebrating her 87th birthday. I'd written a scholarly essay about her memoir, and that's the basis of my talk. And I taught her memoir. I used to teach a class at Rutgers in Newark called Women's Voices of the Holocaust. But when Dan contacted me, he referred me to the video clip we're about to watch, which I was not familiar with. I'd never seen it before. And I was blown away, as I think you will be, by who she is. So I think I won't say too much more about the video. I'll let you experience it. It is available easily online in case, and it's short, it's about 5 minutes. And she tells a story of something that happened to her and with her mother in Bergen-Belsen. So at your leisure, you can just Google it and find it and watch it again if you like to see it again. And then after the video's over, I'll go into my talk, which is more about the memoir than about the video, although I do reference the video. And it's a short presentation. I think it takes about 10 minutes, my talk. And then there'll be time for questions and answers and afterwards, and maybe Dan can, sort of facilitate that since he knows you better than I do.
I certainly will.
So,
excellent. Okay, so everyone, I want to make sure the volume is up on your computer just so that you can hear. I am going to share my screen so you will see the video come up in just a second. So just bear with me while I get this set up. All right, bear with me 1 second. Okay. Everybody should be able to see the screen. It's going to start playing now.
Yeah. I don't hear the sound.
No sound, Dan.
No sound, no sound.
Okay, then the sound may not, let me just double check the sound on here real fast to make sure it's possible.
Put it up all the way.
Yeah, I'm going to put it up all the way. If you can't hear it, there are subtitles, so we can watch those. But let's start it over.
I can't hear.
Yeah, just read the subtitles.
Okay.
Moshe?
Le jour de l'accouchement est arrivé et elle est partie au revire accompagnée de ma mère qui était notre chef de baraque. Et avant de partir, ma mère me dit « Tu te souviens que je garde un morceau de chocolat ?»« Oui, maman. »« Comment te sens-tu ?»« Bien, maman, ça peut aller. »« Alors, si tu me le permets, ce morceau de chocolat, je l'apporterai à notre amie Hélène. Parce qu'un accouchement ici, elle va peut-être mourir. Et si je lui donne le chocolat, ça l'aidera peut-être. Oui, maman, tu le prends. Hélène a accouché, elle a accouché d'un bébé, toute petite chose malingre. Elle a mangé le chocolat, elle n'est pas morte. Et elle est revenue dans la baraque. Le bébé n'a jamais pleuré, jamais, pas même jeun. Au bout de 6 mois, la libération est arrivée, on a défait tous ces chiffons, le bébé a crié. C'était là sa naissance. Nous l'avons ramené en France. Tout petit truc de 6 mois, minuscule. Il y a quelques années, ma fille me dit « Maman, si vous aviez eu des psychologues ou des psychiatres à votre retour, ça se serait mieux passé pour vous. » Je dis sûrement, mais il n'y en avait pas. Plus personne n'y a pensé, même s'il en avait eu. Mais tu me donnes une bonne idée. On va faire une conférence là-dessus. J'ai organisé une conférence sur le thème « Et s'il y avait eu des psys en 1945 à notre retour des camps, comment est-ce que ça se serait passé ?» J'ai eu beaucoup de monde, des anciens, des survivants, des curieux, et puis beaucoup de psychologues, psychiatres, psychothérapeutes, tout ce monde est venu. Très intéressant. Chacun avait son idée, c'était très bien. Et puis il y a une femme qui est arrivée et qui a dit « Moi, j'habite Marseille, je suis médecin psychiatre Et avant de vous faire ma communication, j'ai quelque chose à donner à Francine Christophe, c'est-à-dire à moi. Elle fouille dans sa poche, elle sort un morceau de chocolat, elle me le donne et elle me dit « Je suis le bébé ».
Okay, I think the sound came through partway through, if I'm not mistaken. So I apologize for that technical difficulty. Nancy, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Can you hear
Okay.
me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know, could people, because on my screen, I couldn't see the captions. Could people see the captions?
People say,
Yes?
yeah, okay.
Oh, okay. So you know the story of what happened. Okay, so I won't repeat it. So I'll begin. In the video we just watched, we are introduced to Francine Christophe, a survivor of the Holocaust. We learn that her mother, Marcel, is a protective, kind, and loving woman. Marcel left Paris with some chocolates, knowing one day Francine might need something to sweeten the bitterness of life. We hear about Marcel's great compassion for a woman about to give birth. We learn that Francine is generous and kind too, willing to sacrifice her own wishes and desires because she has learned to be caring and compassionate from her mother. And we hear of a miraculous outcome, a baby born in a concentration camp, rescued from death, who grows up to be like the women who rescued her, someone who cares about the well-being of others. So Dan asked me to talk tonight about the experiences of mothers in the Holocaust. And to illustrate what it was like to be a mother in the camps, I will give some examples from the memoir written by Francine Christophe, which is called From a World Apart, and it's available on Amazon. And at the end of my talk, if I can figure out how to do it, I'll hold up the cover of the book so you can see some photographs. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
When we think about mothers in the camps, we think of their struggle to keep themselves alive in the midst of the most terrible conditions, starvation, disease, and the constant threat of death. We think about their battle to keep their children alive. Mothers needed to stay alive so that their children would live, and we wonder, how were mothers able to endure their own suffering as they watched the suffering of their children? In 1942, Francine and her mother were arrested as they fled Paris and tried to enter the southern occupied zone of Vichy, France. They became prisoners in a series of camps that were so disgusting and filthy, the mind balks. In Drancy, the soup is so foul that Francine cannot eat, in spite of her hunger. Marcel, who works in the kitchen, asks the chef not to search her. She is stealing potatoes to feed the children. This is the first act of a mother, to feed her child. That essential maternal response, the feeding of a child, becomes a battleground for mothers in the camps because there is never enough food. Everyone is starving. Francine writes, "Sometimes we come to blows over nothing, but the women here aren't fighting for themselves, they're fighting for their children." Francine, like her mother, is compassionately attuned to suffering, particularly the suffering of other children. She writes about the separation of children and parents, and these are her words. Herds of Jewish children in the camps. They walk straight ahead, eyes unseeing, already dead. I throw myself into mother's arms, cling to her as hard as I can. I have seen children with scratches all over their arms because their mothers must have gripped into them until their nails dug in. In this image of a mother's heartbreak etched in scratch marks on her child's arms, we understand something of the suffering of both mother and child. We see Francine's acknowledgement of the need for her mother and her mother's need for her. Marcel's arms open to receive Francine and comfort her. The mother's body, her face, her arms, the mother we need when we are helpless and unprotected. This is the mother who is torn from children in the camps. Although Francine and her mother were not separated, they were very lucky. They had a kind of different status because Marcel's husband and Francine's father was a prisoner of war. And according to the Geneva Convention, which, believe it or not, the Nazis respected for a period of time, they were given a special status of protection because the father was a prisoner of war. Life is difficult and unbearable, and then things get worse. Francine and her mother are sent to Bergen-Belsen. Here in Francine's words is the horror of this unspeakable place. The smell of Bergen-Belsen, which surprised us at first, no longer bothers us, a smell of burning, rotting flesh. I'm rotting too. My hands are covered in impetigo. My fingers, stuck together with scabs, look like they're webbed. I can no longer bend them. Mother feeds me. Mother feeds me. Mother takes care of me. If it weren't for Mother, I wouldn't be alive. The terror of losing one's child is what it means to be a mother in the camps. In Bergen-Belsen, there are roll calls that last for hours in the frigid cold. If a prisoner falls to the ground, other prisoners are not allowed to touch them, or all will be shot. Francine writes, I can't take it anymore, Mother. I'm cold. I'm hungry. I'm your daughter. Do something. You're no longer my mother. You do nothing for me. I don't love you anymore. Do you hear? I'm cold. No touching those who fall. Mother is lying there in the snow, her mouth gray. Mother, I love you. Mother, open your eyes. Promise me you aren't going to die. Marcel is lying in the snow, and we hear the daughter's fear, her rage at her mother's vulnerability, the mother's inability to provide enough food to take care of her. And Marcel does not die, but there is always the terror that she will. In Bergen-Belsen, lice are everywhere. They carry typhus, from which so many die, including Anne Frank and her sister Margot, who are also prisoners at Bergen-Belsen at the same time that Francine and her mother are incarcerated there. There's a story Francine tells about a mother and daughter who are being devoured by lice. Francine describes a group of women who strip mother and daughter of their lice-infested rags, bathe them, then cut their hair to rid them of the larvae and bring them back to life. The mother eventually dies, and the daughter lives. Another act of compassion and courage, of risking one's health and safety to take care of another, to bring life into this place of death. One last story about Marcel's desperation to keep her child alive. Marcel finds a saucepan in the snow, and this object is a great treasure. Francine can use it to relieve herself. No one is allowed to go to the latrines at night, and the corner of the barracks reserved for this purpose is overflowing and is a place of disease and filth. But a Dutch deportee sees Marcel with the saucepan, and he tries to take it from her. It belongs to him and his wife, he says, and they want it back. Finally, Marcel comes up with an idea. She offers the wife some sugar in exchange for the saucepan, thinking the woman might want some for her children. And so a bargain is made between two mothers who want their children to survive, and Marcel keeps the saucepan. Ultimately, Francine and Marcel do survive. As the Allies approach, the camp is evacuated. Prisoners are told those who are most fit will leave on foot. Thinking this will surely lead to death, Marcel drags Francine toward a truck that takes deportees to the train station. Unknowingly, they are put on a train that is destined to be blown up on a mined bridge. Eventually, the train is stopped by Russian soldiers before it detonates. But the ordeal is not over. Marcel nearly dies of typhus. And then at last we hear the mother's voice. My darling, so many months, so many years of struggle to come to this. I love you so much, and tell Father that I love him. So this is a love story, the story of a mother's love for her daughter, a love so profound the mother would sacrifice everything in herself to save her child, and the child who knows she owes everything to her mother. Survival comes with its costs. Marcel wants another child, but her body is broken. She cannot bear a child. Francine has nightmares. She is afraid all the time. No deportee ever truly returns from the camps, she writes. But Francine is victorious. She defeats her captors by becoming a mother and grandmother. Through motherhood, the line of her heritage and ours continues. Francine is an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. In closing, I would like to quote from that proverb. A woman of valor who can find, for her price is far above rubies. Strength and dignity are her clothing. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the law of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you rise above them all. So that is the end of my presentation. I'd like to show you the cover of the book if I can, because there's a photograph of Marcel and Francine together when Francine is about 8 years old. It's before their arrest. It's in 1942. So let's see if I,
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
So what strikes me, so this of course is Francine over here and the mother on the other side, is that Francine, the older Francine that we saw in the video, to me looks a lot, like her mother. I don't know if you see it, I see a very strong resemblance. So now I guess I'll turn it back to Dan to see how he would like to handle questions. And
Sure. So those that may have questions, there are two things you can do. There's the ability to raise your hand there's a button at the bottom of your screen that allows you to raise your hand, or you could put your question, just write your name in the chat, and I will call on you, and you can unmute yourself to ask the question. So is there any questions that anybody has they'd like to ask?
I do, but I don't know how to raise my hand.
No, that's okay. Well, you're unmuted, so you could go ahead. Yep.
Okay, I was wondering, and I wondered when I first saw the video about the baby, how it was able to survive. Did they have to hide it? Because I know that's what happened in a lot of camps. They killed them, the Nazis killed them immediately when they were born.
In the book, it's interesting that incident that Francine recounts in the video is barely mentioned in the memoir. It's sort of, so there's not a whole lot of detail, but I'm imagining you're right that they must have had to hide it. And I'm thinking, it was very important that the baby not cry. She mentions that the baby never cried. I mean, it's interesting, but yeah, they would have had to be very careful.
Thank you.
Lewis and Barbara Niver, let me unmute you. Go ahead, Lewis and Barbara.
I don't know if you said it or not. Who raised the baby? Who?
So the baby, I guess, lived in the barrack with the mother and the other women in the barrack, who I imagine also tried to keep the baby alive. It's a miracle, right, for a baby to be born in a concentration camp. So I imagine that between the women in the barracks and the mother, they were able to, to keep the baby alive somehow.
Excellent. Anybody else? I can see everybody's screen, so if you could just raise your hand if you have a question, and I can unmute you. Mark Silverberg.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, no, I was listening very carefully to what you were saying, and it brought back a memory of when we moved to Israel in 1986. And it was Yom Hashoah, and I had never experienced anything quite like this. And suddenly, the sirens went off, and the country stopped. People stopped, and I had never seen anything like this. I mean, when you talk about a Jewish state, that is a Jewish state. The entire country stopped. Cars on the road stopped, and they got out and they bowed their head while the sirens wailed. And I was listening very carefully to her tragic and beautiful presentation. And it brought back a very emotional memory, and I want to thank her for that. And it reminds me how deeply I feel about having a Jewish state and why it is important that we stand together at all times. So I'm very grateful, Dan, that you brought her.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask Nancy? Is that anybody looking at all the screens here?
Is there a question?
Darcy had one.
Darcy, where is it? I don't see Darcy on my screen. Why don't I see her?
Yes.
Darcy, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Let's see. I don't see her on my screen.
Yeah, she's on the bottom. Well, on ours, she's on the bottom middle.
Let's see.
1, 2, 3, over and down. There she is. See her? She just unmuted. Do it again, Das. Again. There.
Okay, hi.
There we go. Yep.
I just wanted to say that to me, a very important part of this was the wonderful training that this mother had for her daughter, gave to her daughter. That small piece of chocolate that any child, and even in the best situations, would love to savor and to hold on to, especially in a time of starvation. And as soon as the mother said, somebody else needs it, the child said, of course. And that to me is a wonderful mother who gave her daughter wonderful values.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's an important point. Thank you for bringing that up. And there are other examples in the memoir of Francine sort of copying her mother's behavior. Marcel doesn't like to see the children just sort of wandering around the camp with nothing to do, so she'll gather them to her and read them. Actually, her husband was a children's book writer, so she'll read children's books to them. And then Francine starts her own little school where she teaches the children. So you're very right to bring that up. She was really an amazing woman, Marcel, and just a wonderful mother and role model for Francine.
Right. Thank you
Excellent.
very much.
I'm raising my hand.
Yes, go ahead, Esther.
You brought up something, and I was wondering too about the children, because I know that they were always separated from their parents and usually put to death because they were of no use. They couldn't do hard labor or anything else. I'm wondering, was this a special place where say, people that like her, with her father being a prisoner of war, were there special places? Because I'm surprised that there were children in the camp.
So most of the children in the camp were separated from their parents. It's a little difficult to understand, for me to understand from her memoir what was going on, because there do seem to be parents and children together, like in that example I gave of the Dutch.
That's unusual, yeah.
It is unusual, and I don't know how to explain it. I know that, as I said before, Francine and Marcel and Francine received special treatment because the husband was a prisoner of war.
Right.
I don't know if that was the case for other inmates or other prisoners or not. It is unusual.
Cheryl has her hand up.
Yep. Hang on, let me unmute Cheryl. Oh, bear with me a second. Okay, Cheryl, you're unmuted now.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Would you tell us about what happened to the father and after the war? Or apparently he came back. Is that he survived?
He did survive, and the family unit is reunited. the memoir really kind of ends there. There's like an epilogue where, Francine mentions, she refers to her own children and that she had, but she doesn't talk really about them in a great deal of detail. And she also talks about going back to visit Bergen-Belsen. But what her family's life was like after they were reunited after the war, you don't really hear what that story was like. You understand, there was a lot of heartbreak because Marcel wanted another child and couldn't have one. I'm assuming the father must have had terrible post-traumatic stress disorder. Francine had her own struggles, but we don't hear too much about it. I guess maybe the epilogue, in a sense, is that conference where the daughter, Francine's daughter, encourages her, like, what, to have this conference on the subject of what if you'd had mental health help at the end? Would life have been different for you?
So did you personally meet with Francine?
No, I've never met her.
Any other questions? Look around. All right. Nancy, is there anything you'd like to say and wrap up?
I just want to thank you all for listening and for allowing me to share this day with you. It is so important, as you've mentioned, to remember the Holocaust. We're certainly living in very difficult, challenging times ourselves, but it's really important to think, to honor the memory of those who endured that horrible period. So thank you for inviting me.
So I want to also just want to give out a thank you to Nancy for taking time out of her day to be with us despite everything that's been going on. And I also just want to give some recognition to and recognize some people who also helped put this event together. Esther Edelman for continuing, despite everything that's been happening, continuing to support and continue this program virtually and online. Vince Galinoski assisting and helping out as well. And of course, Dacia Gantz, the Federation, always providing their support, Mark Silverberg. And I also want to recognize Harris Cutler, who's also been very hard at work as well, supporting all the programs that we're doing for the community to the JCC. So Harris is here somewhere. Harris, give a wave. If there's anything you want to say, let me know. Yep. Got to take yourself off mute. Take yourself off mute.
Which one of them is this? Oh,
There you go.
No, I can remember many years ago when David Fish's
You have to
dad,
talk louder.
when David Fish's father used to talk, and we used to have all Holocaust survivors from Scranton come up and light a candle, and then the kids would light candles. And I noticed today that Cantor Gobner's children put up a tribute to their dad on Facebook. We had a lot of Holocaust survivors in Scranton, and they were all great people. Raised up nice families. Thank you.
this guy.
That's Weinberg. That's Neil Weinberg.
That's Neil?
So I just want to say again, thank you all for participating. While this wasn't our normal, ceremony that we've normally had, I still am so thrilled that we're able to come together to remember on this extremely important day. And thank you all I wish you all very well and to stay healthy and to continue to persevere as the Jewish people always do through this crisis. To be our caring community that we've always have always been. So, Toda Rabah, thank you very much. I wish everyone a Laila Tov. Thank you.
There's a program tomorrow morning.
Yes.
At 10:30.
Yep.
Everybody hug yourselves.
Yep.
Great idea.
Yep. Hey, you guys. Thanks, everybody. Yep.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Hi,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Oh, what time? Well, you can't do this program tomorrow morning
Off,
unless
Dan.
I can use the computer.
Thank you. Done.
As always, good job.
Not
Thank you.
too, but if the computer works, I'll be fine. But
Yeah, but no, that's all fine. We have priorities.